We're back with another JNICE Badminton Racket video, and this time we're looking at the rather famous Black Panther Limited Badminton Racket. Obviously, I've had a lot of requests over time to review this racket, and I've certainly seen how much love it is given online in forums for the Black Panther racket. Hence, it was perfect timing when JNICE said they're going to sponsor this video for me to introduce this racket to you guys. For those of you that are new to JNICE, JNICE isn't actually pronounced JNICE, but actually JNICE. But to help with pronunciation, JNICE is okay. And they are a brand that produces the full range of badminton equipment from rackets to strings to clothing as well. Obviously, the Black Panther Limited racket belongs to JNICE's legendary series of rackets amongst a range of offering. If you've not seen my previous JNICE video where I tested the Elastic Elves 6 Pro, here you go. That was a speed machine of a racket with a compact head and super slim shaft, making it exceptionally speedy, nimble and fast. And by the looks of the Black Panther here, we'll be getting something very different today. Looking at the Black Panther visually, it feels like there's a lot of carbon fiber on show, but under bright lights you can see a lot more of the holographic decals which are present throughout the frame and the shaft too. Also, the Black Panther racket was released to celebrate JNICE's 10-year anniversary as a brand and company, so there's a cool little decal just below the T-joint of the racket to confirm that. The Black Panther racket frame also reminded me about the old school JNICE muscle power frames, where there's little bulges in between each of the grommets around the frame of the racket, starting from the 3 o'clock section and going downwards towards the T-joint of the racket. And this feature was replicated on the other side of the racket too, at the 9 o'clock region. Knowing JNICE, they like to push the boat out in terms of their racket design philosophy. Even just by looking and playing around with the Black Panther, I could feel it differed greatly to the Elastic Elves 6 Pro, which I tested previously. The Black Panther had a thicker and shorter shaft than usual, alongside a longer handle, whilst also sporting a thicker racket frame. All these points towards a rigid, stiff and potentially powerful racket. The decals on the Black Panther seem to suggest that it was a head-heavy racket, although my initial impressions of it didn't feel that way. In terms of measurements, the Black Panther does indeed have the thickest shaft of any standard racket that I've measured thus far on my channel at 7.5mm. If you compare it directly with the Elastic Elves 6 Pro's shaft, which was only 6.3mm, you can see a clear difference immediately here. In terms of rigidity, I can feel a lot of it both from the forward and backward stiffness, as well as plenty of torsional rigidity, which might be good for you depending on the type of player you are. In terms of shaft length, the Black Panther measured in at 20.5cm, and it is also the shortest shaft length measured on the channel. However, the Black Panther isn't alone with this measurement. A few of the famous top-end rackets, such as the JNICE Astrox 100ZZ, Astrox 88S Pro and Li-Ning's Axforce 90 Dragon, as well as their Axforce 100, also share the 20.5cm shaft length. Shorter shaft length designs are generally applied when manufacturers want to shorten the response delay, as there's less whipped effect. If we then move upwards and look at the frame of the Black Panther measured in with a frame height of 24.3cm and a frame width of 18.8cm. Again, taking a crown for the biggest racket frame too. If we compare the compact frame size of the Elastic Elves 6 Pro to the Black Panther, you can clearly see the difference between the two here. You can already sense where JNICE is going with the Black Panther racket. Thickest and shortest shaft alongside the biggest racket frame thus far. If we look at the frame thickness, it came in at 10.9mm, certainly making it one of the thickest frame for a non-specific aero design. Additionally, the frame is fully recessed, which gets me excited, as this normally helps make a racket's swing smooth and fast at the same time. And finally, the handle length of the Black Panther is measured in at 17.5cm, which is pretty normal in the world of rackets. Stringing wise, the racket is rated to 30 pounds in tension, and this is a 4U G5 spec that I have for testing. I also understand that there's a 3U model available for the Black Panther at the same time. However, the grip of the Black Panther felt more like a G4 instead of a standard G5, which I'm very used to, as it just felt that bit bigger than usual. Obviously, this won't impact playing performance, but I do like the gold lettering of the JNICE logo on the stock grip of the Black Panther. In terms of stringing, I felt that the grommets under stringing were not very snug, so stringers will have to be careful, especially when stringing a fresh Black Panther racket, as they might potentially pop out. I obviously strung the Black Panther with my usual string setup of Aerobite at 27 by 29 pounds, and the racket held up absolutely no issue under tension. Also, I want to note that if you're stringing from packs of string, you'll be fine, as there's always more string than needed. But if you're used to stringing from a reel, you want to give yourself more string than usual due to the bigger racket head, which will also mean they need more string. Allow yourself at least 30 centimeters more on both the mains and the crosses, and you should be fine and not having to resort to any emergency techniques to get out of trouble. Here's also the swing weight measurement I've taken of the Black Panther racket whilst it was unstrung, ungripped before being strung, and then gripped too. So you can see how the racket's measurements changed as we go along. So, how does the Black Panther feel? Well, incredibly fast when you swing it around, and yes, it felt very stiff too, with little to no whip. And I will note that this is a racket that requires you to spend time to adjust to it. Just looking at the measured specs of the shaft and the racket frame should already tell us we'll need some adjustments. On my first testing session, I was coming from playing with the JNICE Astrox 77 Pro earlier in the session, and you can imagine the shock when I went from a medium feeling racket to the Black Panther. The difference in feeling and timing there was huge. It felt like I was hitting with a carbon fiber rod, and I had to really change the timing of my hitting technique to be able to play with the Black Panther initially. High energy power shots that requires big swings have no issues. It's more on those which require more finger squeezing and finesse, and a little bit more on that later on. However, this thing is fast. It certainly doesn't feel like this is a head heavy racket at all. It felt more like an even balance to a slightly head light racket to me. For those of you who play with head light stiff rackets, I think you will really like this racket. I do think JNICE's head heaviness rating system is quite generous, as I felt the same way with the Elastic Elves 6 Pro. It was rated as a head heavy racket, but it wasn't exactly head heavy. In addition to that, it felt quite unusual to be able to swing this fast with a bigger than usual head shape. And when you get used to how it plays, you'll certainly be able to find more enjoyment in being able to leverage that faster swing a lot better on court. The shot response from the Black Panther is pretty predictable, and they will react to it well, especially from those with bigger swings and more powerful shots. Defense and counter-attacking with the Black Panther is pretty fun too once you get used to the stiffness and the timing. Unfortunately, the downside to a stiff racket response is the lack of shuttle bite. More finesse shots will not get much help, especially those with last minute changes. For me, because of the lack of head weight and stiffness, the Black Panther feels very sensitive to these changes, and the shuttle doesn't really sit too much on the strings. The shuttle will just ping off your racket immediately in this instance. But if you're the type of player that likes to hit everything hard, you will like this one, as it feels super easy to hit hard most of the time with its fast swing. In terms of power, there's no lack of power with flat shots. However, I did find there wasn't too much weight behind my smashes, probably due to the lack of raw head weight. Maybe it's time to add lots of the premium racket protection tapes on too, to give it an extra layer of protection armor, as well as the slightly added head weight for more comfort. Perhaps that bigger racket frame is designed to compensate with a slightly bigger sweet spot than usual when it's paired with a super stiff shaft. In summary, JNICE really pushed the bar out in terms of design philosophy with the Black Panther, and I actually quite like that they did so. It felt like they were pushing the envelope with the design, and the Black Panther felt a bit more raw in terms of racket performance and feeling. You will have a learning curve with the Black Panther, but the longer you play with it, the more it comes to you. The Black Panther might not immediately feel like it's a racket for everyone, but it's certainly something I would recommend them to try. I certainly look forward to a second generation Black Panther from JNICE if they decide to develop on that one. Till then, I'll see you in the next one.